Picture this. Innocent people in the Middle East. They're having dinner. A bomb is dropped on their house, and they're all killed. What's the problem with this? It's being done by white men. I am Jeremy Kauffman, the Chief Diversity Officer at Halliburton and candidate for United States Senate. It is time to diversify the murderous military-industrial complex. We need to make the nukes gay. And that's why I'm running for office. Like my fellow Democrats and Republicans, I will support every war. I will support stealing billions of dollars from Americans to kill innocent people, but we are gonna make it so gay. It will go down in the history books. We will say never have so many genders and so many races killed innocent people. Let's bomb Yemen, but let's make sure a rainbow of skin colors are dropping those bombs. These are gonna be the gayest transist murders the United States has ever performed. That's what I stand for as the Chief Diversity Officer at Halliburton, and that's what I'll do once elected to the United States Senate. I'm Jeremy Kauffman, and I'm gay for this message. I'm serious.
We have before us the opportunity to forge for ourselves and for future generations a new world order.
This crusade, this war on terrorism, is going to take a while.
We came, we saw, he died.
We tortured some folks.
Yourselves to these unnatural men with machine minds and machine hearts. You are not machines, you are not cattle, you are men. You have the love of humanity in your hearts. You don't hate, only the unloved hate, the unloved and the unnatural. Soldiers, don't fight for slavery, fight for liberty.
And the pod has been parked. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show. It's episode 51 of Dave versus Goliath. Thank you so much for being here. It's going to be a good one. I say that a lot, but I'm super serious this time. We had a good one with episode 50. Not quite the response that I was looking for resoundingly with the Maj Touré episode. But it did get cut kind of short, so maybe we didn't get to finish that bad boy up. But he said he'd come back on. So episode 50.2.0. We'll do that some other time. But tonight, Dan's got the night off, so it's going to be me and a great guest, like I said. But if you were watching this live, I appreciate you being here in the moment. That's the best. I really do appreciate that. So share the links with your friends. And if you're listening later on Spotify or iTunes, leave a nice review. That would mean a lot to me. And don't forget, every Wednesday, I'm on with the boy Dan Smots on The System Is Down at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard. Go check out the last episode we did. He had on Mike Termott, and he invited me on, so we did a little bad cop, worse cop with the Libertarian Party presidential nominee. A good grilling. I think you should check that out. It's worthwhile. And he's going to have a great guest on this Wednesday. But on to tonight, guys. Seriously, I think we got a pillar of the movement. For me, the mind behind Library, Odyssey, the Chief Diversity Officer at Halliburton, mean tweeter and free state supremacist, the great Jeremy Kauffman. Jeremy, how you doing, brother?
Happy Pride, my man. Are you enjoying it? Are you enjoying the most libertarian month of the year?
I feel like you own this month after the ad that we play. I hope you're watching this video and not listening later, because that means you get to see the ads in the beginning, and the one that you and Dan Smots put out for Pride Month, which I feel like this will just live forever. This one has real longevity. The War is Gay video, dude. Yes, I'm enjoying Pride Month as much as anybody can. I feel like most months are Pride months. This one just is really, again, we're taking it really seriously this month. But yeah, how are you enjoying Pride Month, brother?
It's great. I mean, I have my, we have our annual sort of Pride Festival coming up just next week. It's the Libertarian Pride Festival, known as PorcFest.
Yes, sir.
And so, look, hey, I'm definitely getting tagged a lot about the war is gay. I see, anytime there's any military industrial, organization on their Pride marches, people are tagging me, people are sharing the video. So that's definitely great to see. But I'm pro Pride, actually. I'm not, not the let's fly, the Pride flag at the Vatican pro Pride, but I think libertarians need to learn from Pride. Actually, this is the message I've been trying to put out there. I gave a talk at an LPNH event recently, 603 Day, saying the same thing. And I've been tweeting this too, because it's incredible, right? What they did. You don't have to. I'm not saying you have to like it. You have to just respect it, right? You just have to respect it,
Mm-hmm.
And so that's you've got it's incredible. I don't know. What do you think, right? How did they do that?
I did clip that tweet out. I'm going to read your tweet later on in the show.
Okay,
and it's a great one, because you and I are probably around the same age. I think you're a little bit younger, but absolutely the progression through time is pretty incredible. I wonder how much is organic and how much is spurred on, because it feels these days not so organic, but maybe it was at some point. I'm not sure how movements tend to get co-opted at some point, right?
Yeah, I think that's a really tough one, and I could talk about that for 30 minutes. is that real? How much of that is organic versus sort of orchestrated?
Well, let me show you a really quick, I don't know if it's art imitates life or what, but here is a totally super grassroots movement running through our nation's capital. Okay, so two things came to mind right off the bat. One, they're giving the chief diversity officer of Halliburton a run for his money. And two, Ron Paul said, if you're going to have a revolution, you're going to need young people and music. And I feel like these guys bring the party wherever they go. So, yeah, there's some stiff competition there if you're going to compete with this.
Right. So I'll present two explanations, and they're not exclusive. It's you could have a little bit of A, you could have a little bit of B, and of course there could be explanations that aren't either of these. But I'm a little bit torn, because on one hand it could be, you've got people with this ideology and they're behaving as interests, and so they go where power is. There's power in the military, and so they've entered the military, and now they are advancing their agenda. There's another explanation that's the military really likes taking money and using it to kill people, and they'll just say, and both the military and its associated organizations, and they'll just say whatever they need to do to be allowed to do that, right? So rather than thinking of Lockheed Martin as particularly co-opted, they'll just, whatever the dominant ideology in society is, they'll just attempt to reinforce it if that lets them continue to drop their bombs. And I think it's a little bit of both. But I think it's unclear how much of each it is.
Yeah, because in the late 90s, even early 2000s, it was all flag waving, big, strong America, all that stuff. And then at some point, there was a switch in that. And it is really bizarre to see everybody from, the corporate side of the military industrial complex to the alphabet agencies, all change to rainbow flags and things to appeal to it's fascinating. I'm confused why those things go together, but they seem to so well.
Yeah, and I mean, and so that I think is the case study, because you can look at. I was actually looking at some polling numbers today about how unpopular homosexuality was. It's funny because I'm often the guy who's like the anti-persuasion guy. Like, we're not going to persuade people. That's a. But if there's things to take hope from it, stuff like this, because you can look at how unpopular was. How the opinion really moved in a substantial way, where it was something like under 20% of people approved of homosexual relationships in I believe like the early to mid 80s, and now it's the vast majority of people. And so that also speaks to sort of the hollowness and insincerity of many people's opinions. Like, many people just kind of want to be with the majority, and so if they sense a tide moving, they'll kind of go with the tide. But it's like, that's a huge change. You can't point to many other changes where you had them be so dramatic. When I was a kid, I remember this, watching television episodes in the mid 90s, and like, if there was a gay scene, even just like a gay peck on the lips, it would have a parental advisory warning
Right
at the beginning of the episode. That's where we were in the mid 90s. So now we have, like, this is celebrated by the government. It's celebrated by almost every branch of the government. The flags celebrating it are purposefully flown by our government in places where it's especially unpopular, right? We fly. Well, I don't know how. I guess like the Vatican Catholics are like pro-gay now. I don't keep up with Catholics. I gather there's some disagreement here. But we've got the pride flag at the Holy See embassy. We've got the pride flag, everywhere. We've got it. It's that and the American flag, and it's I'm kind of I obviously have my own moral opinions, but like, more than anything else, I'm like I kind of have that mode of like a scientist, where I just want to poke at this and like understand, how is this happening? Why did this happen?
Yeah.
What can we learn from it?
And I've never identified as religious or Christian, but like, certainly, again, coming up in the 90s, like, I feel like I owe some of these people an apology. It's like, oh, like, I really didn't see some of that stuff coming. I really did kind of slip into like, that the Nickelodeon or MTV generation, like, brand of nihilism and just like the YOLO of the day. Like, your parents don't understand, man. Just go do your own, like, it starts very young, and it kind of like progresses into this, I don't know, perversion I guess is probably the right word to use, certainly at this point, but I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I mean, where as to what the right moral words to use for it are quite complicated. But in terms of a lot of it being sort of fake or false promises, I mean, I'm completely there, with you. And I'm not looking. Let me be clear. Like, I don't want to roll any of it back. I think gay people should. I'm not looking at the state police of behavior. I think absolutely they should be engaged in civil unions and so on. But like, this idea, for example, that there were large amounts of gay people out there who wanted to be in monogamous, stable relationships and raise children, but it was just the state, holding them back from doing that. That was false. It turned out there was a small minority of gay people who wanted to have those kinds of relationships, but most of them didn't. This idea that normalizing homosexuality wouldn't impact the percentage of children that express homosexuality. This idea that it was all just completely inborn, and changing these things socially wouldn't impact the expression. Again, completely false, right? We have good studies and evidence to back this up. And so, ultimately where I'm at is like, hey, look, this stuff there are tons, to be clear, there are people who are born gay. Absolutely. 100%. No question. And I'm not looking to, I don't want to police. I'm not trying to stop that behavior. You are who you are, etc. But like, it's also clear that like saying being gay is no different than being straight, and those are just two things, and you just choose between those. Like, do you like ham or turkey? Like, that is also, I don't think, the right attitude about it either. And that is definitely where a lot of libertarians were pushed in the 90s, was to say, hey, it's much more like that. And I think it was reasonable to believe those things. There were good arguments to believe those things. So I don't think it was wrong to be taking those positions at the time, but now we have a lot of evidence. We have now 20, 30 years of like, what has the impact of this been? And so that's really where I'm at. It's like, absolutely it should be legal, but like, to say that it should be like, it should be allowed. And I think like homosexual relationships that mirror, sort of what you would also want in a heterosexual relationship, stable, and homosexuals can have children, right? Whether through surrogates or adoption, like things that mirror the kinds of relationships that I think create, a stable and productive society. We should be, encouraging that, and homosexuals that want to, but the kinds of, there's another kind of behavior. And of course you see this behavior among straight people too. I'm not trying to say it's like specific, but there's another kind of behavior. And it's like, we shouldn't be celebrating that. And a lot of pride at this point, like, does seem to say you have to be celebrating all of it. If you don't think it's good for your public school to be teaching teenagers how to use Grindr, then you're a bigot, and it's like, get the hell out of here. Like, that's insane,
And that's when I get ready to start the Libertarian Party, like, what's that super mega awful church caucus or whatever. Like, I'm just like, this is insane. Like, they played on people's, I think, kids like my age in the 90s, your empathy. Like, oh, this kid, Matthew Shepard, this poor gay kid got like the first hate crime. It's like, you want to hear about this? MTV will tell you about it for weeks and weeks and weeks. And then, 25, 30 years later, it's like, oh man, flash forward to Halliburton on the streets of DC.
So we'll form the Atheists for Christian Nationalism caucus.
See, that's it. So going back to that,
I'm kidding. Yeah.
Of course. Going back to that brilliant commercial though.
Yeah.
War is gay. I want to talk a little bit about your run and your experience running as a libertarian, just running in general, working with Dan Smots, the good, the bad. Like, what did you learn? Will you do this again? All that stuff, man.
All right. Well, there's a safe space. So I want to start with a Me Too confession about Dan Smots. Okay. So he's very talented, but he's a bit of a Harvey Weinstein, if you know what I mean.
He's
okay,
touchy.
So,
I know.
Well, look, I want to keep working in the industry. Okay. So I'm not going to say exactly what he did. I'm not going to say anything more than this, but just, just be careful. He's very talented, but you got to be careful. Okay.
Slippery guy.
So, there's a reason he's so affordable, and that's because you're going to pay.
It's going to cost you one way or another, sir.
I love Dan. I'm looking forward to seeing him at PorcFest, next week. And actually, the greatest video we did is actually the least seen one. It's this PorcFest ride along that I did with Robbie the Fire. It's like a full episode
Brilliant.
of like Reno 911.
I watched it. It's great.
So that's the real gem. That's the deep cut. So running for Senate, there were parts of it that were fun. There were parts of it that were hard. I'm still running as a libertarian. It's really hard, and I'm not sure what you're supposed to do.
You won't hurt my feelings, by the way. Everybody knows I love my Mises Caucus. Mike Heiss is my boy, but you won't hurt my feelings. It's okay. So, whatever. I don't know what it means to be in the Mises Caucus at this point, but I can say that in terms of my right.
what are the positions that they have? It's become, and I've told Heiss that I don't like. I support you, I think, but I don't know.
I think I do, right?
But look, I'm not trying to go back to the LP the way that it was. Obviously, I don't think anyone wants that. Certainly, the people here in New Hampshire don't want that, despite whatever minor beefs there were. So, but I think the LP is definitely having like a bit of an identity, crisis, and I definitely think it could use. Some wins, and what's the future of that going to be? I have like thoughts and ideas, but I don't have, to me, it's like a really hard problem. So I don't have like prescriptions. I'm not someone who says like strongly, this is what you should do, because to me, it's like, you're a pack of people lost in the woods and you're trying to survive. And you're like, you've got to have the best ideas. You've got to have a culture where, people can be, saying things and can be discussing things. And, it's a different culture. You're being lost in the woods, and what do we do? And how do we solve these complicated problems? You're a completely different culture from, we know exactly what widgets we need to make, and we need to make as many widgets per hour, or, we know exactly what we need to do, and we have a pattern, and we need to execute on the plan. Like, the Libertarian Party is in the space of like, we don't know. And by the way, and this is again where the prags are like, they're awful because they're like, we know what to do. And it's like, no, you don't.
Yeah.
You weren't doing anything.
No, you do not.
You weren't doing anything that was working. Like, so I do encourage that kind of attitude. My two biggest things. Here are my two biggest things. One is I really want to see the Libertarian Party think about both the party and the state affiliates, think about how they can govern themselves better. And this is a message that I've actually been starting to put out there more for like libertarian institutions generally, because we have great criticisms of the government and great, criticisms of the state. And I think that these are cogent criticisms, they're correct criticisms. But what I think can be lacking at times is to be able to point and say, this is how you do it. Look at how this is run. If things were run more like this, things would be better. And libertarians, if anything, used to point towards like the joint stock corporation or things like that. And I still think the joint stock corporation is probably better than most ways of organizing things. But like, look at how some of the largest corporations are behaving, and I think that's also partially related to government incentives that they're behaving that way. But like, if we said, how should we, we wouldn't point to, Target, this publicly traded corporation, and say we need to be more. So it's like, how do we do that? State affiliates, they constantly are getting caught up in drama. If you look at the incentives of how a local party is run, it's like, it's kind of socialist, right? Like it's a flat fee and everyone's the same. And, whereas in any given state, some people are clearly contributing a lot more than others. The entire design is prone to takeovers. And this is well before Mises. I mean, you had instances with like Howard Stern in the early 2000s, as I understand it, coming in and taking over LPNY at the time because he just told his followers to show up and pay the fee and take over the affiliate.
Yep.
And so it's like, this is in a lot of ways the worst form of government possible, right? Like, I understand we're a political party and we're trying to engage in democracy, but like, I don't, and I know we're not modeled off after the Democratic and Republican parties, but like, I don't know. To me, it's like, I would love to see the Libertarian Party and the Libertarian state affiliates be saying, well, like, look, we have a positive vision for governance, and it's the way that we run our own affiliates, and we're going to take that and scale it out. But I wouldn't look at the affiliates and do that. And so I don't have a strong prescription. I don't want to say this is the way you should do it. But I think it's a really, really good question to be asking, because when we have our own house in order, it's a lot easier to propagate that. But if the LP itself is, constantly having these power struggles and constantly having all these fights, it's just not an effective organization. And that is not a condemnation of the current leadership. Mm-hmm. That is like, look at the pattern of the last decade, where it's constant power struggles and constant flips and constant drama and constant scheming all the time, like that's not something that productive people even want to be a part of, so some do, of course, but like, so that's that's actually, that's like a really big, sort of exhortation I have is that. And then the other thing that I would like to see the LP to kind of, embrace is like, I think it would be crazy for the LP to go all in on the Free State Project, but I think the LP could embrace things like really lean into federalism, really lean into secession, really lean into like concentration in some ways. Like, look, if I'm all for a good competition, if Florida beats out New Hampshire, I'll move there, right? If other states beat out, but what if we really tried to say, hey, let's stop. And I think we still got to run a good presidential candidate, to be clear, because that's the one time we get paid attention to. So I'm not saying that the presidential campaign isn't important. I think it is very important. But what if our presidential candidate was also saying every time he was in California or every time he was in New York, hey, really great that you're a libertarian. We can win if you leave. and really encouraging this kind of thing. And I'm not saying that to be that in the face about it, but like, let's stop selling a false hope in this idea that we're about to kickstart a national revolution. And I think again here the Mises Caucus already is friendly to secession, already is friendly to federalism, is already saying let's win locally, but really making that part of the presidential strategy is definitely something. And obviously it's a pet issue. I'm a free stater. I'm all in on let's pack ourselves into libertarian Israel here. And then kick out the Palestinian status. But by buying their property, by the way, since, of course, that suggests violence, we'll buy their property, but at the free market price. But like, that's what I want to do. I think what's the path? This was, and by the way, for people who don't know this, the opening essay of the Free State Project was written by Jason Sorens over 20 years ago, just a little bit over 20 years ago. And the first two paragraphs are Jason saying like, I would bet every dollar I have that the LP won't even get 5% of the vote in the next 20 years, and would be, hopeless to achieve its national political agenda. And he was writing this in 2001 or 2002. And this is what he said. And if you compare the trajectory of the LP from when Jason wrote that to the trajectory of the Free State Project, right? Like, it's clear that more and more of the energy and more of the success is happening via this, libertarian concentration, type idea. So, I still want the LP to achieve what it can, but I also, want to, be realistic. So,
yeah. The only thing I'll say is on the very end there, that's true. But that's because not only was it's not like the LP and the Free State Project were like two competing great libertarian entities. It was like one was repelling people for 2 decades or a decade and a half. And the other was like, no, we got it going on over here, which you guys do. Absolutely. But there are some really hard truths in there, man. Like, if I'm being honest, like I think, and I know a lot of people, man, you went on the Rick Jensen show here, producer Randy in Delaware. He's a huge fan of yours. He's a Ron Paul guy. Your campaign was awesome, man. People were excited about it. Obviously, the ads were crushing it. You're a leader in the movement. And when I say that, I mean, like, we haven't talked about Library and Odyssey, but really doing things that are good for the community and that you can point to, and like not just, hey man, I ran for office, or hey man, I'm cool online, or like something you can point to, which by the way is one of the reasons I really like Maj Touré. Like, I built this thing in Philadelphia, and you can point to it, and you can touch it, and people can benefit from it. Side
totally.
note,
And I know that we had like I guess some I don't know if it even reaches the level of beef, but I have full respect for his activism. Mm-hmm. I'm not, and I want the party to be, very, not this. It's very important that you have a culture where people don't succeed by tearing other people down, right? You want to have a culture where people succeed by being builders, by being contributors, by making everything better. And so, like, I never want to be the guy, and it's human nature, of course, at times people, I'm trying to describe the better angel of my nature. Mm-hmm. Maybe I don't always live up to it, and feel free to call me out. Hey, you can throw this clip back in my face when I fail, but like, that's the way I want to be. And I think obviously when we're talking about who's going to be our presidential candidate, you're going to have to, kind of say, where you're at. And so I would be not in support of Maj being the presidential candidate for the LP, but in terms of the fact that he's a committed activist, that he's trying to grow the party, that's awesome. And I'm not trying to say he's like a bad guy. I think there was one comment I made that got like misinterpreted, which was like more about the fact that I think I really like what's attracted to me, because this is what attracted me to libertarianism. I want a guy who like really gets it, who really gets the philosophy, who can articulate it, who could handle any hard question or any hard hypothetical thrown at them, and they could give a consistent answer, and they're not, we've had these candidates in the past, and it's clear Gary Johnson, even though he's our best candidate, he didn't get the philosophy. He didn't actually get it. Like, he's like, well, it's better when markets are like a little bit freer. It's better, it's like liberty seems like better most of the time. Yeah. Like there wasn't there wasn't like an actual principle behind it. And all the libertarians that I've liked the most, they have a principle behind it. There's a philosophy that they really get. And I understand this is part of what makes us weird at the same time, but like, that's what I want.
It's a reasonable request, man. It really is. I understand.
And so that's really all I was saying. And, about that. And, but yeah, I think, Maj obviously trying to go to the party. And hey, we're from the same city, by the way. I spent a lot of time in Philadelphia.
We have so much government here, but yet the roads are collapsing all over.
I saw that. I was like thinking about, I was like, this must be what it's like to have like escaped South Africa a decade ago, getting out of Philadelphia.
So before I went off on the Maj tangent there, but
well, I wanted to his name, and I just gave you 2 minutes.
No. I do appreciate that. But the downside, or I guess the rough side of the running for office and everything, was like, damn, dude, I can't think of anything I would have done differently with your campaign. Like, it was just like chef's kiss. But still, 2%, I think, was what you came up in the Free State as a libertarian. So I was like, oh, damn, like, we're that far behind. And then I think you tweeted about the curious case of Brandon Finney, who ran as a Republican, got in New Hampshire, got elected, changed to a libertarian. They didn't elect him again. And then he re-registered to a Republican and got elected. So it's like, damn, like in the free state, that's still kind of where we're at.
So I'm a cynical person. Of course, I wouldn't believe I'm a realist, but most people would call me a cynic in terms of my views about human nature and politics. And I think Brandon is a really great example. And like all the evidence says that like about 90% of people are gonna vote R or D, and that's it. They're just gonna go and they're gonna push the R or the D. And so like if you and it's really, really hard to break out of them, even in small districts, right? Like in Finney's case, we're talking about a district of like 3,000-4,000 people. This is, he had the ability to really, to really break through.
Mm-hmm.
But it is just extraordinarily hard. And then, you have to deal with the fact that the degree to which like the system is, rigged to some extent, in the sense that like they wouldn't include me in the debates. They wouldn't even, in the case of like the largest debate here, like they wouldn't even release the criteria. Like they're like, we have these objective criteria, and then all their objective criteria were just subjective. Like there wasn't a way to tell if you met them or not. They're like, here are objective criteria. There was just a bunch of subjective criteria. And so they were just like they were just able to reject me. And so I mean I think it's a shame, because it's like obviously anyone who's heard me speak, see my work, like I could, and I think that's part of why they do it. I don't think there's an interest in having those things be heard. At the same time, I think like literally, even if I was in the debates and even if I said all of those things, like maybe I would have gotten 3%.
Like I was like, I know my boy Randy, he was like, yo, I've heard of him. He really had high hopes for you, man. Like, look at this libertarian. And I was like, yo, if anybody could do anything great, I didn't think victory, because I think that we're literally a generation away from any, a libertarian getting elected to federal office. But it was the best I had seen, the best, attempt. So I was thinking maybe 10%. I was like, oh man, what if you got 10% in New Hampshire, the free state?
So one, and by the way, even in terms of why free staters don't vote libertarian at times, like a lot of them take the view, and I don't think it's entirely wrong, that like it's just not possible to win under the Libertarian Party. Like most free staters aren't members of the Libertarian Party. I would like to convince more of them to join, because I think like actually I was thinking, we were talking about how like if we got all the free staters to join, New Hampshire could just be its own region in the LP. Like there's more than enough of us, and so, we're talking about ways that we can be pushing more of those memberships, because I would like New Hampshire the New Hampshire LP to be growing. But a lot of free staters take the view, and I can see where they're coming from, that it just doesn't make sense, to vote for the Libertarian. And so like, because also look, I'll tell you, it gets thrown in our face, that we have Democratic representation at the congressional level. And so we can point and say, hey, look, we've got all these proud ANCAPs that are elected. We have, by the way, lifetime LP members in the state house. They're just Republicans.
Right.
But we have multiple lifetime LP members that are in the state house. And so a lot of free staters are like, well, hey, like, some even would say to me, why are you doing this? You should be running you should be running in the Republican primary like Bruce Fenton did if you want to be running for Senate. Why are you wasting your time, in the LP? So
it does beg the question then. What should you could say for all the states, but definitely in New Hampshire, if you guys are the tip of the spear, like what should the LPNH be doing?
So, that's a good question. Because it's not clear how we can win these local races, and if we have a good candidate because also that's the other thing is like the Republican Party, so many of the both the local parties and even the state party, like there's so many libertarians there, like it's not like there's hostility. Like for the most part, if you went into your local Republican office and said, hey, I'm a libertarian and I would like New Hampshire to leave the union, and I think police should be privatized. will you support my campaign for office? Like, they probably would. A lot of them would.
Right.
A lot of them would, and that's something that's also so interesting because it shows like how you actually persuade people. And part of how we're winning here is you have these radical libertarians who are also, responsible people in their own lives. They might own a 20-acre farm, or they might, be an author, or they might have a business or whatever. And they go in and they do the thing. They do the Ron Paul thing. If they stay principled and they be clear in their positions, and they're also friendly, and they're even political. And sometimes they'll vote for things that they'll horse trade, but they'll be clear about their positions, and they're able to make friends, and they're able to pull people to their side. We had a school budget battle here that we lost. It was actually kind of a bad one. It was like a situation in Croydon, and the New York Times came in and covered it, and NPR came in, NPR National, not just a local affiliate, came in and covered it. And on the surface level, it was kind of bad because we lost, and arguably it made more people not like us. But also what I saw was like, what I'm seeing more and more is like, there's all this sympathy. There's all these Republicans who are like curious about what happened there, because there was some people who were very in favor of like, basically a very strong local school choice program, basically putting both basically reining in the local spending and putting local school choice completely on par. So it's going to be the same amount for the local school and for school choice program. And it was also a number that was much lower than the current number. And at first it passed, and the Democrats nationally rolled in all the spending, did a special referendum, and actually undid this restricted budget. So in one sense it was a loss, but it brought more attention to the ideas. And I see these Republicans who are more normie Republicans now, like, buying this guy's book and engaging with his arguments about how the teachers are holding us ransom, And so more and more normie Republicans are getting kind of like radicalized by the interactions, that they end up having, with the other people here.
Oh man. Cool. So do you have, at this point, are you still working with LPNH, or in any, like, are you still tweeting through them or doing anything?
Yeah. So I do the comms. The comms is mostly myself, Reed, Coverdale, and Eric Sawyer. And then there's a couple of other people who participate. I think Ben Ware posts occasionally, and Zephin posts occasionally.
Nice.
And so I'm still doing that.
Thanks for your service.
Yeah. It's a good time. And I hope, look, I think I obviously, well, I don't know if we want to do the whole conversation about LPNH, Twitter, but I think we've already had some wins, and hopefully we'll continue to have those. And I think that's certainly something that New Hampshire can do, is just be like thought leaders within the party. But I'm looking for something a bit more. I would like to find something more ambitious than that. I don't want that to be all that we're doing. I want to be getting people elected. I want us to be, generating, real wins. I would like us to have the best turnout. Whoever the LP nominates, I would like, I would like them to do better in New Hampshire, than anywhere else. I want us to be that libertarian state.
No doubt, man. And Pete Q says, like, the way to get shit done, and he's right, is through lobbying. You'll have more luck lobbying than you would at the ballot box. And I think at the very least, we can use all of the social media might behind that at the national level and state level. And, we can literally show up to DC when we can with cameras and podcasts and whatever. And
and we're doing that. Like, there's a big effort for Defend the Guard here that's being led by Derek Prohl, as well as several other LPNH members that are involved in that. And so, like, we're doing the lobbying thing. We do the thing where, we go out and, make friends and make allies. And, something that's also funny is, like, for all the people talk about it just being, being just a Twitter account, we've actually made friends with a lot of state reps through our just the Twitter account, because we have these principled libertarians, and they're members of the GOP, but they know the GOP isn't, saying what they wanted to say all the time. Right. And so they also follow us, and sometimes they retweet us. And, it's reached a point where, they come out to our events. There are a number of Republican state reps who come out to LPNH events and see, like, the LPNH people, like, as part of their base, and that kind of thing. And where, like, if we ask them, and by the way, this will happen and already has happened. So this isn't just a hypothetical, but like if we ask them, hey, could you introduce legislation on this? They would do it, right? So we've got to find, what we can actually achieve. But we can also, sometimes the contribution, like if you're better at memeing, maybe your contribution is memeing. I'm not saying that it's all about memeing, but like, you can meme even in legislation, right? Like I have a bill I'm trying to get someone to introduce this next session where you just replace tax rate with theft rate. And that's the whole bill. Like, you don't change anything else. You just introduce a bill that says, I want to replace every instance of the law. So you're not trying to change anything. You're just like, let's call it what it is,
Right.
And like,
that's great.
And like, hey, look, I have ideas for, how we can have clean, more efficient power, but that legislation is not going to get through. And if I wrote it, it wouldn't get anywhere. But this would be a news story, if a rep introduces that bill. And this is like, partially this is, I think, what I have to contribute to this movement more than other people, like, is this kind of thing. Because I think I just have a mind for it. But like, that's what I want to do. I was rereading What Must Be Done by Hans Hermann Hoppe. And he talks about things that are in line with the Free State Project about, creating a sort of localized libertarianism. And he talks about doing it through property rights, through covenants that you can say effectively that like this property, you would restrict socialists from coming in to your community is one of the ideas that he has in ways that libertarians can actually win. But one thing that he doesn't touch on that I think is very real is that like you can repel people through like contracts and actual law. You can also repel people through needs. You can repel people through conceptions, right? Like right. Bud Light doesn't taste any different, but people conceive of it differently, so they buy less of it.
Public opinions, everything.
So the more that we can make New Hampshire be regarded as the libertarian state, and people like just associate those things in their head, like the more you have built a wall that keeps the kind of wrong person out, because the wrong person doesn't want to move to the libertarian state. Libertarians are crazy and insane, and they're fascists. And poor people are starving to death, and whatever crazy beliefs they have about libertarians, and they'll get shot. Like they won't move there because that's the way they conceive of the state. And you can see this even in federal immigration numbers, where like without federal policy changing, like the Biden to Trump administration, a lot of it was just like the kind of person who would cross the border thought that under Trump they would be treated hostilely, and under Biden they would be treated nicely. And it wasn't even a matter of policy changes, it was a matter of perception. And so I think that is just so important, and it's kind of the skeleton key to understanding a lot of my activities at times. Is like I'm always thinking about how can I reinforce in public perception New Hampshire libertarian, and how can we keep progressives and statists and authoritarians from coming here, and how can we encourage, because a lot of people, they're not going to even come on to the Free State Project account. They're going to be looking for just the state with low taxes, or they're going to Google most libertarian state, or, other things is going to be part of how they end up discovering it. And so the more that I can make that just sort of a meme, it's not that perceptions are reality, but perceptions also do tend to become reality, So I think I think that's really important. And maybe there's lessons for the LT there as well, in terms of in terms of how they can grow from where they are.
I think so too. How I saw the first episode of the NBC piece that they did on you guys. I know that's a standing series, but how do you think that will have a positive effect for liberty in New Hampshire, or negative, or kind of a neutral? Because it seemed like it was like fair, but not like promoting it in any way. Or
well, fair from the mainstream press is promoting it. In my view.
Yeah.
I actually, again, because here's the two-pronged. I use a two-pronged test, right? Two-pronged test is if a libertarian saw this, would they like New Hampshire more? And if a non-libertarian saw this, would they like New Hampshire less? Right? And so the documentary passes both tests for me. Yeah. Especially because as libertarians, if you were told that an NBC documentary was saying these things, you would already be, at least if you're a good one, like a little bit on guard, right? You're not like, oh, well, the NBC documentary is surely going to give me the 100% straight tale about a radical libertarian. Like you already know. So it was shockingly fair. Like really much fairer than even I anticipated. I think that it's possible that some of the people involved may be, and by the way, no explicit coordination, I'm not trying to say, but like, I think they may just actually be somewhat limited. I mean, I always look for the simplest explanation, right? So my simplest
That would be
explanation,
the best if that's
people
true.
immediately involved in the project were actually just at least somewhat, like, they didn't hate us. They were somewhat, so they weren't the progressives coming in to just do, kind of a hit piece. They really let us speak in our own words. I'm obviously biased, but I thought we came out looking like much better than the other side. Certainly to a libertarian, I thought we came out.
That's what I was just going to say. I know I'm your target audience there, but I was like, it just seems like, well, these people look like they're enjoying their life and having fun and really amped up about something. And the other people are just the lady in the park calling the police on the guy having the barbecue. That's
right.
That was the vibe.
That's another one of my strategies, by the way, is because I think if you're going to antagonize someone, like, antagonize like the shrillest, most unpopular, like, dominant, like, kind of person, where like, this is the kind of person who's like going around being a bully and a bunch of people are quiet about it because that's their personality, but they secretly don't like that person. Like, those are the people you want to hate you, right? Like, that was very good at that, right? Like, Trump was very good at like getting the types of people who would get the most mad at him were the kinds of people that a lot of people didn't like. so people would see that person getting angry, and and then in turn, feel sympathy. You also this was you said something about grilling in parks, and there's been a recent discussion here about and this is something this could be an LP wide kind of social one. And this was something Free Staters are doing, right? Because you see these problems with parks. Where obviously you have drug use or vagrancy, and frequently in a lot of city parks you also can't grill or consume alcohol, right? So the idea is you have like like dads or like families come in and have illegal barbecues to displace and push out the drug use and the vagrancy, right? So if we're gonna have anarcho tyranny, let's use grill some burgers.
Oh, that's great. That's a good idea. I think everybody could get behind that.
Yeah. That's the thing that can bring normies to your side. Like, that's a great way. Like, it's so visceral because you're like, look, this burger is illegal, and so is that guy sleeping on the bench. And like, which one is the cop going to come and police? Because in most parks, it's the burger flipper and not the guy, drugged out on the bench.
Yeah. Oh man, good point. I want to talk, obviously we're going to talk about PorcFest, the Free State Movement, in a minute, but I just thought maybe you could, I kind of breezed over it, which I feel like I can't do that, but you're the founder and CEO of Library and Odyssey, correct?
Yes.
Currently. So if you could maybe tell everybody who's not familiar why those two things are important to libertarians or good ideas to get behind, and if you could maybe tie it up with the latest update, and you don't need to go into super detail, but I know that you went to war with the SEC, and if you could maybe just give me an update on that, how that's going for you, and if I'm sorry if that brings
absolutely
misery into your life.
No, that's it's obviously it's something people always want to know. The part of the reason I don't talk about it is it all moves in slow motion, so the update is frequently not that much has happened.
Right.
But Library is still out there. It's still working. There's more, just about as many people using it as ever. So more than 10 million people are going to use Odyssey, this month. There's tens of millions of pieces of content on it. So it's odysee.com. The idea of the underlying protocol behind it, which is called LBRY, is to do to publishing what Bitcoin does to money. So basically give you a cryptocurrency wallet that contains your online identity, that contains the key to what you have published, and basically make it so that the YouTube or the middleman doesn't have the same level of control. We got very much railroaded by our own government, as well as Reuters, the New York Times, pretty much every European disinformation NGO in existence, and a number of other institutions that tend to be anti-free speech or freedom of information online. We are still going through. We lost a case against the federal government, against our own federal government, the United States federal government, and we're still going through a penalties phase over that, and that's just kind of hopefully wrapping up in the very near future. But I have thought that it was going to end before, so I've kind of adopted the mentality that it goes on forever until it actually ends. So I'm not, actually getting my hopes up, but I am. People tell me it might actually end, and then I will see what happens from there. There's a lot of ways that things could go for me personally and from Library. Odyssey is going to continue to be functioning one way or another. We have made enough friends who support our mission, and so Odyssey is going to be continuing. Whether it will be viable to kind of grow the sort of large scale platform that I originally wanted to build and had a vision for building, like I can't change the laws. I've got to kind of see how some of these things play out. And it's been frustrating for me actually, as much like obviously the immediate situation is frustrating, but I've just been kind of frustrated by cryptocurrency generally because I'm such a believer in the idea of it, and I still see all this potential. So I'm not even like my view of the fundamentals hasn't changed, but I just see all these things that like could have happened, that kind of haven't happened. And I feel like so many people in cryptocurrency have kind of lost sight of what I would regard as the most important thing, which is like making sure that we can have these transactions that can't be controlled by, the government, and so that does mean, in my view, for cryptocurrency to succeed, it needs to work commercially as a way of purchasing things online. Like if people are buying things online with cryptocurrency, or I suppose also from your neighbors, but I think more likely online than from your neighbors. Your neighbors, you can pay cash, Like if I need a way to anonymously pay someone near me, I can use cash. Maybe I would use Bitcoin, but like I already have cash. Whereas like where I really need it is like, when my government says, because I'm a trucker and I don't like vaccine mandates, I'm not allowed to have a bank account. Just as like a hypothetical thing that maybe might happen one day, that truckers would be denied bank accounts because they wanted to protest their government. I don't know. Like that is where we really need cryptocurrency to shine. And to me, it's like it didn't live up to that, and it still can. I'm not like,
right. Will they let us do it? Is the problem.
It feels like the industry is like, oh, we need to get permission from the government. And it's like, well, your technology is threatening to the government. The government realized that, and now they're threatening you back. Where do you go from here? And a lot of the industry is just like, well, I don't know what we do, and I've been that way too, by the way. I'm not, like I was willing to go to civil court. I don't want to go to criminal court. Like,
Yeah.
Like, I have full respect to people like Ian Freeman and the Crypto Six that have been willing to like take that level of risk onto themselves. Like, I'm willing to put some time and money on the line, but like I got 4 kids, man. I don't want to go to jail. Like I'm not quite ready to be the Gandhi or the Martin Luther King.
What are you going to do when you're the last remaining state after the 49 authoritarian fall? You're surrounded.
It's a real question. Where I'm at right now is I think, we nullify the AI regime, and then we'll have the world's most powerful AGI, and we'll use that to take over.
That's awesome. So wait, I'm such the lame.
Sorry,
No, I love it. But to their big gripe was that what you were offering creators through Odyssey and Library was like, yo, when you get all these clicks and likes and plays, you get a cryptocurrency for your shit and you own it, right?
Well, the real thing, look, there's no free lunch, right? So you've got to put money in the system. Money's got to come into the system from someone. So either viewers have got to pay, advertisers have got to pay, or creators have got to say, I don't care about making money.
Right.
There's no free lunch. So we didn't claim to solve that, but what we did claim to do is make it all very transparent and make it all very clear. And what we wanted to really do was make it so that everything was built on top of open source code, and there wasn't this same level of control that existed at the platform level. So Odyssey, which is a web app and an iPhone and an Android app, like Odyssey can be censored, but there's this underlying protocol compared to email, like SMTP is this protocol that powers email. Like Gmail can censor you, right? Like when you use Gmail, they're your email provider. But if you wanted to like download your emails, and if you wanted to communicate with someone on Gmail despite not using Gmail, those things can still happen because email is this interoperable thing. And so that's what we wanted to do, is we wanted to turn sort of social sharing or specifically social video into something in that space. So, Odyssey might be like Gmail. It's something that a lot of people use, but it's not the only way to use it. There's Library Desktop. There's other clients that people can use, and those are interoperable clients. And you're not, and because you're the actual owner of what you've published, there's not this ability to trap you. There's not this ability to censor you that exists, in the Web 2 world. And I still believe in this world. The biggest problem with it is we need, for this world to work, like everyone that's using the system needs to own a small amount of token. It doesn't need to be an expensive amount. I'm talking about like 50 cents. A dollar's worth of token might be enough for years, like not like this expensive kind of thing, but you need to have some small amount. And the federal government, as well as governments outside of the United States, have just made it very, very hard to disseminate that.
Yeah.
And how do you have a system in which, because we can't find a way, maybe after this all works out, we'll finally have rules that we can follow. But right now we're in this holding pattern, and it's very hard. Because the U.S. government said that if someone takes out a credit card, gives us their ID, buys $20 worth of the token, consumes it immediately, signs a sworn affidavit saying that it wasn't an investment, it was still an investment. That's what a judge said. And it's like, well, all right, man, I don't know. Like, words don't mean the same thing to us.
Right.
Like there's not, it's an insane kind of thing.
Well, it makes me so angry, man. So I can't imagine. I really applaud you. Like you're smiling and you're telling the story, but it pisses me off. So I can't imagine how it makes you feel. And I just want to say that I think, it's got to frustrate you at least a bit because
it does.
Fucking,
it does.
You built the thing. The thing is what we need. You built the thing that we need, and we're not like we're being prevented from having it and utilizing it, and people take stuff for granted. And I'm sorry that happened, man.
I'm pretty emotionally like even keeled. Like I have like very low neuroticism. I tend to be like I don't get that excited either. Actually, I'm like very. I'm like mildly optimistic at all times, like just slightly optimistic. It's like, and it's tough to push me out of that. But I was like, I would have never used the word depressed to describe myself, but I think I actually was depressed somewhat over the last, not like right now, I'm not saying, but like, like I lost the case. Also, I lost the case the same day of the election. It came out the same day. I mean, I knew I was going to lose the election. That wasn't like shocking, but like it was still like I had both of these things pending, and they both, kind of came out at like the same exact time.
Oh my gosh.
So, well, as I said, like it is what it is, and you gotta control what you can control. I can't control, the rest of this stuff. And maybe what I can control is building something better. That's what I hold out hope for. That there will be, because I will say I'm like I have full respect for like the doomer libertarians. Like they're worried about a collapse. They want to defend themselves from like negative potential outcomes. I think that's great. But like I'm like the kind of libertarian who like wants to go to Mars. Like I want us to be like building new great stuff and doing new things, and I see so much potential in human ingenuity and what humans can create, and like that's what motivates me. Like I want that to be untapped. I want there to be spaces, like even someone like Elon Musk, who I don't think is actually a libertarian, but like he's clearly held back by the government. Like he would make more stuff. And there are lots of people who would, and I'm not saying he's a wholly good guy. I have funny complaints about how he runs Twitter, for example. But like, there's lots of stuff that he could make. There's stuff that all these people could make, and they're held back. And that's what excites me is that like, because it's entrepreneurship, it's human ingenuity. I'm not because I mean, there's again, even Kaczynski has some criticisms, but like you're wearing glasses right now, and it's awesome that human beings invented glasses, right? Like it's awesome that. That I can go and so, food is so affordable and plentiful and all these things. It's human ingenuity that makes all these things possible. Doesn't mean it doesn't go wrong sometimes. It doesn't mean that it's wholly good or anything like that. But like I like that, and that's what like that's why I'm a libertarian, and I see the government as like inhibiting that. And that's like definitely one of my, fundamental motivations. That said, Doomers, if I get it wrong, I'm gonna come knocking on your door because I've only got like a month of food, like maybe 6 weeks. Of the apocalypse, I am in trouble. Okay, so, but that's me. That's where I'm at.
Well, you're in the right state for it, man, and I appreciate your contributions and your always just slightly more than positive attitude, for sure. So speaking of positive attitudes and things to be excited about, you got PorcFest coming up. It's the most magical time for, I guess, anybody in New Hampshire who believes the things that we do, coming up real soon. I know you're going to be speaking. I know you're going to be participating in a debate. We'll talk about that in a second. And what else? Oh, what do you have? Dairy Queen Story Hour as well?
I have Dairy Queen Story Hour. Yeah, I mean, PorcFest has got like 700-800 events on the schedule. I mean, it's crazy. It's there's just so much going on. I think everyone's got to make it out to PorcFest at least once in their life. I think every libertarian's got to make it to New Hampshire at least once in their life. I mean, it's like if you don't make it to Mecca at least once, you're not a good Muslim. Okay, right. So I think everyone's got to make there at least. You don't have to move, but you should visit. You should be familiar, with what we're doing up here. And PorcFest is sort of the crown jewel of that. And it's there's something about being a libertarian where some libertarians anywhere they live, maybe they've built enough of a bubble for themselves where they can be themselves. But I think a lot of libertarians, their job, their community, even their friends and their social circles, like my social circle before coming up here was like a little bit nerdy and maybe at times had some libertarian tendencies, but like definitely was not wholly libertarian, not at all. And so, people are, you're guarding yourself because you have opinions about current events. People talk about some topic and they just assume that you agree with them and you don't. So your mouth shut, and there's something about like being surrounded by people who share your values. I think it's kind of like, I'm not gay, so I don't actually do it, but like, I think it's probably something like being at a gay pride parade, where you're kind of idea, well, now right. You can just like spin your dick at your job and you get promoted. But like, right. When it used to be, you really had to hide it. And so, I think there's an aspect of that that just feels good. I mean, aside from all the entertaining stuff and the parties, and various things, although it's also family friendly. Like I go with my 4 kids. Mm-hmm. My kids grow every time I go to PorcFest. Like my kids get to push themselves and their own independence, and it's a spot where they're very safe. Well, I wouldn't say it's optimized for safety actually, but they're safe in like the right kind of, like they're safe in a way that they get to push themselves and develop the right kind of. It's the libertarian kind of safety. You can feel comfortable that your kid can wander off 100 yards, and even if he gets a little bit, everyone there's going to be friendly and whatever. It's very fun. It's a really good time, and of course it'll all be coming out on YouTube later on the Free State Project YouTube. So if people can't make it and they want to see the talks, it's also not too late to come for people who are in the especially maybe you're in driving distance and you can come up even if it's just towards the end of the week. There are well over 2,000 tickets sold, but I believe they're just packing it full of as many people as they can this year. So still get tickets at PorcFest.com for anyone who wants to come out.
I got to meet and talk a little bit with Dennis Pratt on Dan's show a couple weeks ago. I love that guy's attitude, man. Good move putting him at the helm and kind of like me. I forget his exact
vision
for
the event. He's really changed the event. It used to be much more organized by the Free State Project itself, and his vision I think was really, really good. Where he moved the event towards something where stuff just happens all over the campground, and anyone can put anything on the schedule. It's a very libertarian design as well, and so only if your event is sort of large enough or popular enough, then you can get the extra large pavilion area. So if Dave Smith wants to do a comic set, then he gets the pavilion. But unless you need 500 people at your event, have the stuff throughout the campground, and it encourages everyone to walk around and see everything. It encourages everyone to be. People are amplifying their campgrounds more and more. Like people are doing different things as a result. Like this year, I've never done this before. I'm sharing my family and 8 other families have got 8 campgrounds, and we're creating one mega campground.
Oh my God, that's so great.
For our sort of parental family group. Of course, other people are invited to come by and visit us and so on. So it's but he's changed it. Like the LPNH, the Free State based, and I think LP National are sharing like 2 or 3 tent sites. creating their own sort of mini party areas and hubs and stuff like this. And so it's thousands of people, although there's people at hotels and stuff, but a lot of them are camping, and it's just a large campground. You can walk around and check out all these things. Of course, there's food vending and everything. And so there's everything from Christian conservatives getting up early to pray and having religious discussions to like at the far end of the campground, you've got like people doing like acid and dancing naked or something like that. But it's it's well labeled, and then people can stay to their own spaces. And I think that's also important because it's a chance for us to like practice it a little bit. Like can sort of more liberal or libertarians get along with conservative ones? Can we have rules and respect each other's spaces? And when we have these cultural conflicts. So I also think it's good, like if we want to live in New Hampshire in the future, like together, which I think we do, like PorcFest is a chance for us to be to be trying those things and sort of a mini sort of practice for how we might have a wholly libertarian, society.
Yeah. Man, that's funny you mentioned that. When I first got introduced to the movement, that was one of the first things that like hit me. I was kind of like a, punk asshole kid, like a, dirtbag. And I remember like the intellectuals would like give their time and like, like treat other people with just, hey man, like just like normal people. I was like, that's weird. I just always assume, the bourgeoisie or whatever, you have to unlearn some of these things. And that was one of the things that I really liked about the movement. You'd see cowboys with punk rockers and hip hop kids and, whatever. Just, that's kind of cool. And I'm
that's
sure
one of the best parts about everyone's like so informal. Like I'm like, I mean, I like David Friedman. I think he's a brilliant guy. I don't agree with him 100% on everything, but I think he's just absolutely brilliant. And he just like wanders around the campground, and you just like have a conversation with him. I don't think Dave Smith is going to be there this year, but like last year, like Dave Smith was just at the Meezy's tent, almost every night, just hanging out, having a beer, and it's just like a chance to have like much more sort of like grounded interactions that are less sort of distant as well than you can have at other events or in other places.
It sounds magic, man. Dennis was talking about like the legendary like shakedown street style stuff, just like hundreds and hundreds of vendors doing all kinds of things, and just from all over, food and jewelry and smokables and drinkables.
Yeah.
All kinds of good stuff, man. But you have a lot of...
I like one rule I like to do is I like to order food from the dirtiest person I can find. That's what I like to do every PorcFest. Because I assume if he's the dirtiest, he's got to be succeeding on food quality. That's what I figured, right? Like, because he's not... no one's buying from him on his aesthetics. So
and he's working hard. You can see it. He's got all that shit all over him. So I know it's not like a purely like a political thing, but you do have, there's Tulsi Gabbard is going to be there this year. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. I saw Dennis Kucinich, a bunch of, Reed Coverdale speaking, DL. I saw a couple other libertarians speaking. I know you're talking. Who are you really excited to see give a talk?
Well, I'm excited that some of those big people are coming, although I'm not necessarily excited to see them. I'm excited that and this is a bit different, that we have RFK coming, Tulsi, Vivek Ramaswamy.
Right.
So these are the some national candidates, and part of it's that like we really have been ascendant in the last 3 to 4 years specifically, where like the entire and again, I'm not saying that these candidates are always good, but like they see us as important to their own path to power. And like that's just, you have to that just shows that they see us as important, right? That they want to come to the events. I mean, Vivek asked me to do, and I disagreed with him on plenty of things. And I told him this when I had a call with him. He said, come out to my event anyway and just say what you think of me.
That's awesome.
And stuff like this. And so I think the way to judge this stuff, look, free staters aren't going to get convinced that Tulsi Gabbard is actually a libertarian or that RFK is actually a libertarian. Would they vote for them in the primary? Maybe. I do think it makes sense to vote for the best possible candidate that can win in the primary, whether they're a libertarian.
Agreed.
You can always do your protest vote in the general, but in the primary, just vote for, because in New Hampshire anyway, you can just like vote in any primary. So just vote for, whatever one you vote in a primary, vote for whoever you like. And if we can both, they want to talk to us, but also it's a chance to like get them to acknowledge our agenda and acknowledge our issues. And it's a chance to create moments that benefit ourselves. I'll tie it back to what I said earlier in this conversation about how I'm always thinking about how do we create this memology, this brand conception of New Hampshire as a libertarian place. I see this as part of this, because guess what? Who gets to pick the questions that we ask these people? We do. We get to pick, right? So we're going to get to create videos asking whatever we want, of these people. They're going to have to walk by hundreds of our people to get into the event where we'll be able to,
Don't forget that. If you're watching this video and you're going to be at PorcFest, come up with some great questions for all of these people and get that clip for yourself. Great point, dude.
Exactly. And so this is what I think. And also, I'll say if you're on the fence about something, because I know that some of this stuff was also contentious, I think at this point, it's happening. So you can retain your skepticism, right? You can retain your skepticism. After PorcFest is over, you can be like, hey, retards, you shouldn't have had these people there. You got taken advantage of. But like right now it's happening. So like all that I think it makes sense for the movement to think about is how do we make the most of it? How do we make the most of it? I think it's going to be positive that these people are coming, but I'm someone who will always update, in the face of the evidence. So if 3 weeks from now, Tulsi owns us and makes us look bad or something, well, like we shouldn't have invited Tulsi. I'll change my mind. But let's make the most of it. Let's see what happens. I think it's going to be positive, but let's, one of the things that I hate, and again, if I ever do it myself, call me out. But like some libertarians just have this thing. They find the one thing. They find the one thing that they disagree with, and they spend all their time talking about that thing, And it's like, and I've seen some of that with PorcFest, where there's a decision the organization made, and some people don't like it. It's like, all right, but it's like we're not going to agree on everything. Like, and is this really it? And I'm not even saying that I like every decision, but it's just like you gotta reserve when you do that at times. And also I think what you do is when something new is happening, same thing, because it relates to actually, I guess what I was saying is like, well, we don't know what we're doing. So because we're lost in the woods, right? We don't know how to we're lost in the woods. And so it's like when you're lost in the woods, you don't want to have a culture where someone tries something new and a bunch of people snap at that person. Like
boom. Thank
right?
you. Thank you. Yes.
Yeah. And so I think that's like, okay, make it known. All right, like someone had an idea. You think that idea is bad. We heard you. Move on. Let that person see if their idea works or not. You can say you were right like a year from now or later, but don't spend the next 6 months online being like, your idea is bad, your idea is bad, your idea is bad, your idea is bad, your idea is bad. And then you were there in every reply, every time they were talking about their idea, tearing it apart. And then you're like, oh, your idea failed? I'm so surprised. Right. It's like,
right, especially if they're your people, man. If you're around and they're trying to build something, I don't know, man. Just encourage them.
So I think that's very important, and that's also why, by the way, there are times I haven't loved everything the Mises Caucus has done. There are times where I've said I would have done something a little bit differently there, but I'm not gonna play backseat driver to every decision. I'll agree where I agree and try to find common ground where I find common ground and try to be, more positive and focus on where we're agreed and what we can do together. That's the Hug Caucus, by the way. That's why, you're a board member now. Anyone who even hears the word Hug Caucus said out loud is on the board. So it's growing every day.
I take it then you'll be in DC next year representing the Hug Caucus.
If I can win the support of the New Hampshire contingent, then yes, I will.
All right.
I will brave Washington D.C. for the Libertarian Party. That's what I'll do.
It's closer than Reno, man.
That's true. Yeah.
It's just in a cesspool. That's all. So yeah, I think that's great too, man. Libertarians, we got to work with that wiggle room. It wasn't lost on me that the Rage Against the War rally, like had Dennis Kucinich was there, Tulsi Gabbard, some of these faces. It was not by any chance libertarian speakers weren't running the show, but the Libertarian Party or the Liberty Movement made that happen. And I think that that's cool that that's happening with the Free State Project too, that it's attracting those people, and they kind of have to cater to you guys. I think that that's great.
Exactly. Yeah.
Awesome, man. One last question, and then we'll do some neat tweets, and then we'll get out of here. Any possibility? Because, and I'm not just saying this for me, but some people have mentioned your name as a possible presidential candidate on the Libertarian Party ticket. Is there any possibility of that happening?
You don't want me, man. Like I'm not the guy.
I would place you in top five, and I'm very picky about who represents me.
I think we've got to grow the band. I mean, because like the truth is, like I'm all in on libertarian concentration. Like
I know you are.
I tried to run a good campaign, but like at the end of the day, like and this is weird because I'm part of the LP, but like I'm kind of an LP. Like I'm not an LP skeptic. I would I want the LP to be the best that it can be, but like I'm not, so it'd be hard for me. It was actually, and I'm not, and maybe my campaign was weaker for this, but when I was approached to run, actually, one of the things I actually wrote like a whole page. I made people read a whole page and a half document with my thoughts when I was approached, and like one of the bigger things that document had in it was I was like listing out some potential problems or questions, and I was like, it's really hard for me to go around and act like I'm going to be your next senator. Like, it just feels like I'm lying,
Sure.
But at the same time, I think that's kind of what you need. Like, you need someone who can kind of sell hope or whatever. Whereas if I was going around, like if you had me, as I said, you had me at an event in New York, I'd be like, leave. I'd be like, what are you doing here? I'd be like, thanks for coming out, but get the hell out of here.
I think, and I've told Dave Smith to his face and Spike and Maj too, that they would have my support. And I kind of like Maj as a vice, but I think everybody who would accept a vice presidential position in this party should just run for president and see where it falls. But you would definitely be on that list too, man, for lots of reasons. We talked about them, some of the things that you've built and the way that you represent the movement. And I totally get the skepticism with the party. It's been a year since Reno, and I think that they've done a lot of great things, but there's some room for some criticism too. And, we got to keep the spear sharp on our end too. And who knows, maybe we can, get shit fired up with that Hug Caucus in DC, and we'll see what happens. Just sleep on that one for, I planted the seed, everybody. David Brady wanted me to say that. So
I still would love to get Dave off the bench and talk him back into it. I mean, I want Dave meets my test of he combines heart and mind, and I think that's really what you want.
Isn't it a shame that we can really only think of that guy though to do it? Like this, that I feel like we're so vulnerable if like we're like, well, we found this one guy who will do it. Not sure he's going to do it.
Actually, I mean, I think Spike. I think Spike's like pretty good at combining heart and mind. Like, Spike is like my only, and this is small. Again, Spike would have my support. So to be clear, like he's occasionally like a little bit LOL-y for me or whatever you'd call it. Like I'm like, that's not true. It'd be nice if that was true what you're saying, but that's not true. It's just how But that's kind of that's kind of where like that's actually, if anything, sometimes my failure mode, where like they're things that people just believe that are nice, and I've kind of got to be the guy that's like sometimes ruining their nice thing, but I should probably do that. I think Spike is so maybe he's better in that way. So like that's he, and also the way that maybe a little bit of drifting where it's like where you're like, no, but he's very good. He's so good. He's always in the replies. He's always sharing people and all this and frequently in a way that's like funny or stinging.
Right.
Or whatever,
or
even heart rate, or touching your heart as well. So he mixes it up, and I think he's a very good communicator. So,
thanks for that, man. Real quick, let's do a couple neat.
Here are some tweets.
So Scott Horton says the Industrial Revolution is the best thing to ever happen to humanity. Ted Kaczynski was a fucking retard. How do you feel about that? Because I know that some people in our community are having a time that this guy's become like a. Ever since I got to Twitter, I was like, oh, this guy's a hero. Okay, all right. And I haven't done much research into it, but some of our pals are mourning Ted, and others like Scott Horton think that that's kind of silly. Where do you fall on that?
Yeah, I find like the thinking here to frequently be like very reductive. So it's like it depends on like where you are in the hole. Like I think if you want to really lionize this guy, he's a mistake. I think if you want to say he's a retard, like that's also clearly not true. Like he's objectively intelligent, so he can't be a retard, So I think it's but it's very difficult. People either to say like, oh, this person may have had some ideas that were sometimes good. He may have also had bad ideas. He may have done wrong things, So, I mean, I am pro-progress. That kind of relates to what I, talked about, earlier. That doesn't mean everything's progress, but I think like going back to like we can look at how we used to live and this idea that it was somehow, that as hunter-gatherers we were somehow living a better life. I'm just very skeptical of this. I think we'd be living shorter lives. I think we would be less healthy. I think we would have a lot of problems. I'm not really trying to move backwards in that way. I think people should look for more meaning in their life. I mean, I think like the idea of like the way that technology has become kind of a panopticon and these kinds of things. Like I'm not saying that there's nothing to those criticisms. I think the strongest reason that I'm ultimately like anti-Kaczynski isn't even that stuff. It's that like this is kind of fun. This is my like my centrist take. Like normies are like Kaczynski is bad because he killed people, and like online weirdos are like Kaczynski's a prophet, and like I'm a centrist, and I'm like, well, it's not the murder that's bad; it's that he didn't even murder. Like he didn't. There didn't even make sense who he was murdering. Like,
right.
That's why I'm ultimately like, well, like if you spent like 10 minutes thinking about where you would send those bombs, like you wouldn't have said like, why did you send them? It doesn't make any sense. Like,
yeah.
So he comes out with his manifesto. 17 years. He was mailing bombs for 17 years before he published his manifesto, and then the bombs were like really sent pretty haphazardly. Where he would be like, find a name in the back of a pamphlet and be like, well, I'm just going to send him a bomb. Like, it's like he wasn't aiming at Harvard where he was ostensibly tortured, and I find that plausible. He wasn't aiming at the Department of Defense that was, planning the program. Right. He was like kind of just mailing bombs, And so I don't know. I think to say he's clearly not like a good guy. If you want to say that there was some good stuff there, maybe there was. By the way, I was criticizing him. I also retweeted some quotes of his that I liked, because the point to me is that it's, a mix.
Right. Cool, man. That was pretty well balanced. Thank you.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I was looking for. This one is from you. Jeremy Kauffman says, in the 80s, no gays in the military. 90s, don't ask, don't tell. The 10s, gays are okay, I guess. In the 20s, we fight for the gays. Gays are America. I don't care if you hate it. You simply have to respect it as one of the most memetical, dominant ideologies of all time.
I kind of gave you this take. I will say the one because the one thing here is like, it is not clear to me that the gay movement was ever punished for any of its excesses. It's not clear to me that like the gay movement would have happened faster if people weren't there being flamboyant in the streets. So I would say for the libertarian side, these debates, because the gay movement had these debates too about how much they needed to be proper and versus how much they should be wild, and you had both sides of it. And we have the same stuff in the libertarian movement, and so I think like the best norm to adopt there is like, you don't have to love the libertarian crazies if you're of the more pragmatic persuasion, but at least just let them be and maybe run mild cover for them. But like, don't think that they're the ones holding you back, and so that I think is maybe something to take there. But yeah, it's crazy how much that has moved.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Last up, we got Liam McCullum He's the new host of Decentralized Revolution with the Mises Caucus. Said, I could not care less if the Libertarian Party receives less revenue, receives fewer votes, and is not treated as a serious contender in presidential elections. What I want is for the Libertarian Party to be the only voice speaking on the largest platforms about war and the Federal Reserve to the millions who are hungry for truth and their country imposed lockdowns and mandates on them. Cheers, young buck. This guy's like 22 years old. He's doing some great stuff. And I thought that was pretty cool because, for the criticisms that the party could get, the New Guard, some of them that have been lobbed at him is, we've lost some donors and, membership is down. This stuff is normal to me, and I'm kind of with the kid, man. I really don't care, especially during this period, this Renaissance period. If you're going to have it, that's going to happen, and I'm not really swayed by haters there.
I'm mostly that. So where I'm with him is that it's not about the number. It's about the amount of people who are like really with you, right? Like having more money from people who want to be, and who want to be, where Gary Johnson is or whatever. Like it's just not clear to me, what that's doing, or where, how you're building or growing from there. Like to me, this actually ties back to the governance question, right? You want to have a core of people who really share a set of values. You want to have a structure in which that can be solidified within that group. And then you have a structure where more people can be pulled in without that same sort of risk of dilution or being this constant struggle for redefinition. But it's sake, at least when you're at, this is also tricky because at the early stages, it's important that you have people that are believers that are believers, that are understanders. They need to be believers. They need to be understanders, right? They need to actually get the ideas. Like attracting someone to the Libertarian Party that it just sounds good to them. Like, socially liberal and fiscally conservative, but they don't actually get that it's a system of property rights, say. And then they go around propagating something else and bring more and more people in, and you've lost sight of, well, what are we actually doing? Like you need to be growing on top of a cohesive set of ideas because that's what you ultimately want to win with. If you go around like Gavin Newsom had this tweet the other day about how like we need gun safety freedoms. Okay. Like gun safety freedoms. Like people can take the words and mean anything. The NAP. Here's a foolish that libertarians are all about the NAP, and I like the NAP. But like if you got everyone tomorrow to sign a pledge, I agree with the NAP, right? They just make things aggression. They just say, oh, yeah, I'm against aggression. But if you don't pay Social Security, you're the aggressor.
Right.
Like people just make words mean whatever they want them to mean. And so we have to have an understanding of what we actually stand for. And we need to bring people and we need to grow that, not by being like nice platitude and then people agree with the platitude and you tricked them. Tricking them is for when we can actually win a general election. Right. Like when you're at 15, 20, 30% and you're trying to reach, all right, now you go crazy and trick people. But like when you're at 1%, tricking people isn't helpful. Like you need to find people who actually believe the thing that you actually care about. And so like, and so it's almost, and that's kind of a weird way of thinking about it, but like we're too early to be tricking people. Right. We'll trick people later when we're closer to 50%. And so that's where I agree with Liam is that like it's not, if we grow the party by just tricking people into being, that's not helpful. That said, like there are a lot of people who only pay attention to politics during the presidential election, and being an actual candidate for president gets people to pay attention to you in a way that like nothing else does. And so I do think the presidential, like even me as a young kid who was libertarian in inclination but less political when I was younger, like less actually paying attention to all of it, like my exposure to libertarian ideas like was more likely to come around like presidential cycles. I was going to pay more attention to politics then. And so I think like we want to have someone, like it would be crazy to not run someone for president or whatever. Like I think you've got to have your best spokesperson running like during that time. That's one of your best times to be recruiting people. So I do think it's important. That's where I would maybe disagree. I do think the presidential race is important for the future of the
I agree with that. But if we can't get Dave or Spike, we're kind of screwed. Is that are we all in agreement there? Like, do we not have that many more options?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. There's probably other people out there.
If you see some people, shoot me some names, man, and I'll go harpooning, because I think presidential candidates should be recruited. No, I don't like when guys come up and go, you know who would be great? Me. Let me show you why I'm great. We should be plucking our people that we think would do this.
Yeah, well, this is a more cynical take as well, but I'm good for that. Like, you really kind of see libertarian presidential candidates fall into two categories. Like, you've really got these true believer types, which tend to be kind of like autism spectrum type. They really believe that they can do it. And by the way, a lot of these are good people. I'm not trying to they're good people, but they're completely delusional about how anything actually happens. But they're so convinced that they can do it.
It's the last lie that libertarians tolerate. So I can.
Yeah, you've got to really. I mean, I admire them. I'm not trying to. But then you've got people who kind of want to take advantage of. And I'm not saying they're bad people either, but there's some self-interest in why they're doing it. They're trying to raise their profile. There's something that they're trying to accomplish, and a lot of the presidential candidates fall into one of those two categories. These sort of true believer types who are going to be terrible at persuading people because they're so self-deluded about everything, although they're very sincere people, and I suspect I would agree with them on policy nearly entirely. I'm not but they're just they just don't understand. And then you've got these people who do understand it, because they understand it doesn't really make sense. So they're only doing it if they have they have something and that's also not necessarily bad. We can accept that. I think, again, not trying to, I think Spike almost certainly ran for president to raise his own profile. And that's good.
I'm actually cool with it as long as the grift doesn't outweigh the principle and, like you said, the true believer part. I'm cool with that. As long, I said the same thing to Maj. Hey, man, if this is good for Black Guns Matter and, the party and the movement, that's what I would look for. And same for Spike. If this is good for You Are the Power and you can grow whatever and you can help me grow the party, cool, dude.
Totally. And I wouldn't even use the word grift, but yes, I agree with you. Yeah.
I think everybody that has a podcast has there's some grifter in my right? Somewhere. Okay. I'm not selling anything yet, but
I actually, this might not surprise you since you have some idea of my personality. I actually have a very specific definition of the word grift.
Okay.
So to grift, you make money off of a problem while either not improving it or making it worse.
Oh,
so
okay.
You make money off of something, but you're either not improving it or making it worse in making the money.
Okay, I wasn't using that. I was just kind of thinking you might ride a wave of something that's not really yours or something like that, maybe. But okay, I like that. Yeah. That's good, man. All right. So that's pretty much all I got, brother. You want to tell everybody where we can find your stuff? They can find you
if you're not watching this on Odyssey, check out Odyssey, ODYSE.com, and you can follow this channel over there.
Yep.
I'm the most active on Twitter currently, where I'm under my full name, Jeremy Kauffman. You do owe yourself a trip to New Hampshire at some point in your life, especially if you've listened to the show all the way through. And the Free Staters are like libertarian Mormons. They're oddly nice at first, but they're still, they end up being really good people. So, reach out to me or anyone else. People are here to, help you have a successful visit, come check out the state and that kind of thing. So I'm always available for, questions, that kind of thing. Tag me on something on Twitter. You send me a DM, send me a message. I love talking New Hampshire and libertarianism.
I can tell that you do, man. You are a true believer, and that's what we should all start there, and everything cool came after that. Library, Odyssey, everything out of LPNH, and thank you for everything and all your contributions. And damn, that I know it was probably tough, but that campaign was beautiful, man. You guys crushed it. You and Dan, I'll tell you what a duo. We're all lucky for that.
Thank you, Dave.
Thank you for being here, man. I appreciate your time.
Thanks.
You got it. Everybody, that's episode 51. Appreciate you. Go to PorcFest. I will not be there, but my pal Dan Smots will be there, getting all kinds of good footage, talking to everybody, ramming that microphone in their face like he does. But check out his show on Wednesday at 3, and we'll see you then. Thanks, guys. Take care. All right. And I'll see you next time.